Ladies and gentlemen of the Lunarian Crescent, today is a great and glorious day. I am SorenPlays and welcome. This video is going to be different from any other video that I've done so far, so bear with me. As you can see from this beautiful picture, it says Fowlicane Tempo deck profile, Elestrals Premier Tournament. Yes, I won a Premier Tournament with Fowlicane. So, on March 8th, I, along with about 100 people, entered the recent Premier Tournament right before Dallas. And as everyone has seen me stream for the last month and a half, 2 months, I've entered into plenty of tournaments with Fowlicane. Now you may be asking, why am I running Fowlicane? Because everyone wanted Hurricane. And me, as a Florida man, was like, I can't have enough Hurricane, so I'm going to bring the bird, who is a cheaper and more effective use of Hurricane. As you can see in the thumbnail, you have the mama bird, the peacock, or peahen in this case, and then you have her little baby, Pegas. Pegas put in a lot of work, Fowlicane put in a lot of work, and a lot of other cards in my deck put in a lot of work as well. So, what we'll be doing today, which makes this different, normally I do a deck profile, and I go over the deck list, and then I have you watch a video. Today it's going to be different. I'm going to go over the current deck that won the previous deck list as well, and then I will go into a step-by-step or round-by-round guide over any misplays I may have done, or any plays that I felt that were important for the matchup that either helped me win the match or helped me lose the match. We're going to go through all 7 rounds of Swiss. We're going to go through the top 8, the top 4, and the semifinals, and then the final match. Some notes are more thorough than others, because this took a lot of time, and I wanted to make sure I get this video out to you guys as soon as possible before I have to head to Dallas next week. And I work a lot for the next 2 weeks leading up to Dallas, so I was trying to make this as fast as possible for you, while I'll still be able to provide you enough details. So make sure you leave a like and subscribe. If you want to see more of this for future tournaments where I do a deck profile and then go into analysis of each round, please let me know. Show your support. I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's get started. Alright, first the current build. So on the left is my build that I currently run. 3 Eddies, 3 Rabbits, a Electric, 2 Boombats. Main Boombat surprised a lot of people over the tournament, and I was really happy to do it. We have the 3 Spectruses, 2 Pegas, 2 Galaxies, 3 Sorlets, 2 Fowlicanes, 2 Tsunamis, 2 Hurricanes, a Zeus, your traditional one of Thunder, excuse me, then you have your 3 Shields, 3 PTAs, 3 Gorgons, your 1 Resdings, and your 3 Ambrosia. Now, how does that differ from the main deck from my previous build? Well, if you look over to the previous build, I have 2 Veritukas, a Fowlicane. Those are the Elestral differences. So, what I noticed from the last tournament is I would usually set up the 2 Veritukas and the Fowlicane, and I would put in the 2 Boombats pretty much all the time. So I was like, well, if I'm setting in 2 Boombats pretty much every single time instead of the toucans, why not just go ahead and remove the toucans altogether and put Boombats in main deck? And I thought that was a really smart move because it really helped me, as you'll see later on. And then the big bird, I was like, I'd rather have a second, or I'd rather set in like the second Hurricane from side deck into main deck, which came in handy a couple times as well, having multiple Hurricanes, because I was more likely to see the Hurricane plays. Everything else basically stayed the same, so it was just those Elestrals were swapped out, and then a Hurricane went into the main deck. Now, side deck, you may be asking, what was the changes? Well, obviously, as I was saying, from the previous build, I took out the Boombats and put them in the side. So what did I replace the Boombats with? Well, I replaced the 2 Boombats and the Hurricane with 2 Cockadoodles and a Drickadoodle. Now, you may be asking, why did I do that? Well, here's why. So, Lunarian has been a really top deck over the last couple months due to the meta of Lunar. Moonrise, it's Lunar. Lunarian has been a main thing. And one of the best things about Cockadoodle is I can summon him and I can suppress an Elestral. Now, obviously, the key target for that would be like a Like Void or a Werepop. Because if I did it on a Werepop, they would not be able to ascend into a Lycanvoid as long as Cockatoodle is on the field. So it's great out for Werepop. And then Dracodoodle. Draco is basically a Javelukine because what they both do is they both do piercing or burn. So with Javelukine, if it attacked in attack position Celestial, my opponent would burn for 3. With Dracodoodle, it kind of pairs well with a lot of other cards in my deck. So like Solet, it also expends a wind to get an effect. Now Dracodoodle's effect, I expend 1 wind and I suppress all Elestrals on my opponent's side of the field, which is really great in case there's a Doppelganger on the field, if there's Spectruses on the field, if there's Galaxies on the field, shuts down those effects. And then what Dracodoodle does is when it destroys an Elestral that's suppressed by Dracodoodle's effect, I burn you for 3. Now, if I have a wide board and I have a Dracodoodle out, it allows my other guys to potentially swing over things that they wouldn't have normally been able to do due to their effects. Like if I have a Sorlet, I can now walk over that opponent's Spectrus without having to worry about crashing. Or in case, like I was saying Doppelganger earlier, Doppelganger's effect would turn off and I wouldn't have to lose 2 attack because of the 2 spirits on Doppelganger, allowing my Elestrals to get their attacks back. So that was the main thought process behind putting the Cockatoodles in and the Dracodoodle. The Cockatoodles I never really set it in, but I did set it in Dracodoodle a decent amount. There were a few times where I was able to bring out Dracodoodle, but I think there was only one time that it really came into play and later that was properly enchanted. The other few times it was misenchanted to get over a few things. So it was really great. The rest of the side decks, no change. Island of Aeolia, I'm still contemplating on if I really need that. I did go up against a Water Animator deck, and I didn't side that in, and I maybe should have to help my guys, but that's on me for not thinking about that. In one of my other matchups, for the first time since creating this deck and putting Cryoblast in the side deck, I actually swapped out my PTAs and put the Cryoblast in. I think it was against the Bugsnax matchup, just because a lot of his bugs are 2 cost or less for defense, which are like my guys. So Cryoblast really put in the work. I'm really happy for it. Spirit Math? No Spirit Math change. The math stayed the same. Considering I've run this deck for 2 months now, I know the Spirit Math. I've had people comment and be like, wow, I've looked at your Spirit Math, and that is hard to handle, and it's very difficult. That's why you have to understand your deck. Alright, let's get into round by one. Round 1 versus Volt Tempest. So let's look at my opponent's deck list real quick and kind of see how it matches up against my deck. So his deck, he kind of runs a lot of the same cards as me, and so because of that, he thought I was also on Volt Tempest, which I kind of liked that my opponent was under the pretense that I was running Volt Tempest. So his deck, he has 3 Pigas to get rid of background, which is really cool. He has an enemy sail for healing. He has his own Cockatoodle. He has 2 Aeromares. The key thing about the Aeromare to me is, I used to run Aeromare in a Nexus Pantera deck, so knowing that he had an Aeromare, I had to make sure I got rid of them at all costs because I could not let them stick for their 2 or 3 cost ascensions. Otherwise, I'd be devastated. He runs 2 Sorlets. He runs 2 Griffews, his Volt Tempest, 2 Ash Rabbits. I really feel like you should probably run a 3rd Ash Rabbit instead of 2, but that's just me. He runs his own Boombat. He runs an Elechek Jolton and an Arclith, along with 3 Island of Aeolias, which is helpful for me that I don't play any because it also helps me instead of just him. So if he ever played them, I wouldn't have done anything to get rid of it because it benefits me more than it technically does him because of the playstyle. He has his own Hurricane. He has his 1 Rusting. Excuse me. He has his standard set 3 Shields, 3 Gorgons, 3 Ambrosia. No PTAs in this deck, which I feel you could kind of get away with, but I almost feel like you probably should have. He runs 2 Altar Stars, 3 Zeuses, and 3 Yetis. So I would almost say about half of his deck is basically the same as mine, except for I'm all wind focused with the little splash of thunder, and he's more half and half on his build. I will say there was a few misplays on my opponent's end. I wouldn't necessarily misplays, but as we'll get into it in a sec. So match 1, the key points were I EQ'd a Pigas. And a lot of people are like, why would you EQ a Pigas? Well, because he was playing a lot of back row at that time, and then if I allowed a Pigas to stick, he would just be able to do Pigas again and start getting my back row. and I didn't like that. Plus, it allows me to clear the board. My deck is all about control and tempo. By making sure he doesn't have an Elestral stick, there's no way he could be able to bring out anything to beat over my guys. Because a lot of his guys are weaker than mine. The only way he could really do anything is his own Sorlets or Boombats. Or get Zeus's out, which costs a lot of resources. So I pretty quickly won that match. So the biggest misplay from my opponent, he got so excited to see his Volt Tempest that he cast out Volt Tempest without having a Zeus on the field. And because of that, I punished his Volt Tempest. It felt really bad. He admitted he shouldn't have done that because it was greedy not playing without Zeus. And then it was really bad because my Boombat put in a lot of work. My Boombat was the one who was able to handle the Volt Tempest. I was able to Gorgons his Volt Tempest to keep it around. And then I cast a Boombat. And I don't remember if I sent it over a Boombat or I just hard cast Boombat and used its effect to get rid of Volt Tempest. Even though I just watched this, I don't remember exactly. But it eventually got to a point where my Boombat stuck around for a while. And eventually my Boombat had 2 or 3 extra spirits on the field after like popping 3 or 4 things. And then when I went to attack, my opponent shielded my Boombat. So fair trade on my end. It's still 2 spirit damage my opponent would have taken. And then all I did was bounce back a Boombat to my hand that I could play later. Not much value on my opponent's end, great value for me. Match 2. I forced my opponent to shield an Eddy because in both matches what happened was he would start off with an Aeromare, I would go into an Eddy, and I would crash. A lot of people would be like, why would you do that? Well, as I stated earlier, Aeromare, if it gets ascended over, becomes a artifact, and then my opponent's Elestrals would be unaffected by Elestral effects. And my deck kind of has that control, so I kind of need that. One play that I didn't understand what my opponent did, he had one Elestral on the field and I had none. And he goes, I like your play so much, I'm going to play my own and cast a Boombat when I had an empty board. By empty board, I mean no Elestrals. Generally what you want to do is you want to save your Boombats. I get he wants to put in pressure, but in his situation he knows how my deck works. I would have saved Boombat till I got like one of my bigger guys out, like a Sorlet or my Fowlicane out, because that would have been a little devastating for me. So he cast Boombat, and then I was just able to get over his Boombat the next turn. So getting rid of that pressure like that kind of slowed my opponent down and allowed me to get the win. Not much to say. It was very quick and simple, 2-0. Alright. Next round. Round 2 versus in Titan. At first, I didn't even know if this was a proper in Titan deck when it came to the first round, because he never got out Arbarm or in Titan. So, or I didn't even see Arbud. He mainly played like his Spectruses, his Nobbies, his Jolton, and Viscerus against me for round 1. But looking at his deck list, you have your 3 Arbud for your searching. You have your Equal Links, which out of all the times I've played against a in Titan deck person, I've never seen them play Equal Links. I feel Equal Links is kind of a irrelevant card in this deck, but that's just my thoughts. You have your 2 Viscerus, which will eventually get more support. As you saw in Firestorm, there will be another Viscerus that you can add to make 3 Viscerus. That's pretty good. It still gets its +1 effect, but it's unaffected by counterwinds if I'm not mistaken, which can be kind of devastating. You have your Arbarm, your in Titan, which pretty standard. You have your 3 Rabbits and your Elechick for your Searcher, for either your Zeus or your Demeter, depending on what you need. You have your 3 Nobbies, and then obviously with your Nobbies you have your 1 Doppelganger, and then your 3 Spectrus. You have your EQ, you have your 1 Demeter, and then 2 Zeus. I don't know. I almost feel like you don't need 2 Zeus. I probably would have ran with 1 Zeus and then 2 Demeters, but that's just my thought. You have your 2 Tsunamis. You have your stated defensive package. You have your 3 PTAs, 3 Shields, 3 Gorgons. Then you have your 2 Altars for Nexus shenanigans. And then you have your Ambrosia and Rushing on your Laurels. Side deck is very interesting to me, just because you have Toxion's in there. I don't really feel... I get they're a bug, but I don't really think you need that additional sting, as you would like to call it. You have an additional water, where it's like, if you're going to be running all that extra water and you only have 2 water spirits to handle that, you're sacrificing a lot. I feel you should have had more water in this deck. Especially, I get it, originally it's just that one for the 1 tsunami, but against my deck you need as much tsunamis as possible. You have your dense fogs in there, which in this meta, dense fog isn't that great, but against decks like mine it can put in work. But a lot of my effects happen by casting, so if you want to stop it, you have to do it before I'm able to use their effects. So you got to be careful for that. You have an Arclith. I don't feel like you need an Arclith. I get why you do it, but when you're only on 5 Thunder Spirits and you're splitting it between Zeus's and an Electric, it's kind of pointless. You have your standard Eddy package. You have your Galaxy, which is interesting. If you're going to play Galaxy, you should probably play more, and I don't know, it's just weird. You have your standard Cryoblast, which is sided with 1 Frost Spirit, and then 1 Spoiled Fruit. Not much to say. It's a very interesting deck. Side deck I kind of disagree with. I'm sure when Caster does their coverage or whatever, Trishula will go through and probably say the same thing. That's a very weird side deck. Spirit deck, as I was saying, having only 1 water for 2 tsunamis isn't bad, but when you're going to have multiple sides like that, 3 Eddies, a Galaxy as well, you need more water. And you could probably fit this in this deck very easily by either taking out 1 or 2 Earth, but maybe he's running into the same issue where more spirits is bad for him. But I'm not the person who runs this deck. I'm not an expert. Shout out to the natural log who's built this deck and kind of understands the in and outs of it. But let's get right into it. So round 1, I Gorgon Gaze and Ardbun. Since I don't normally play against this deck, I'm like, well, I can't let you get your search off with Ardbun. So I feel that moving forward, I would have rather let him resolve and then use later and save that Gorgons for something possible like him going in a Doppelganger and trying to attack over something like a Sorlet. That way they would crash instead. Or if he tries going for a Viscerous route to beat over my guys, I would rather do it then or against like a Nabi. I shielded Nabi twice, which cost me a decent amount of spirits. In my head, I thought it was easier, but moving forward, I realized that why do that? I'd just rather him hard ascend or use Nabi, beat over my guy, ascend into a Doppelganger, and then use shield against a Doppelganger. In my head, I thought I was saving spirits, but by doing that, I would have gotten rid of at least 1 or 2 Nabis for the Doppelganger, so the trade would have been more of value. So that's on me. So I wasted a lot of spirits that game, and that's what cost me the game. I also saw no healing, and with me doing those shields multiple times and everything, I just couldn't get board tempo enough, and I just lost because I didn't see healing. Not much to say to that. So match 2, he started off with a Viscerous against my Sorlet. The casters even said the same thing. What I should have done is let Viscerous crash into my Sorlet, and then him just bring out that defense position Viscerous, and then I would have been able to handle it on my turn. But instead, I decided to excuse me. I decided to Tsunami, putting it in defense and then keeping my Sorlet alive. I could have eventually used that Water Tsunami for something else, like if he started to swarm the field. So that's on me. This is the match where I set it up, the PTAs, and put the Cryoblast for extra removal. Put in tons of work getting rid of the Spectruses and the like. I'm really happy I did that. This literally, like I said, this was my first time setting them in. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. Ignore this. Hold on. I think this is wrong. I think it was a... Oh, man. I forget it. Now I feel bad because I thought this was a 3-0, but give me 1 second. Let me verify. I apologize. Because I think I put this wrong. Because it looks like... Oh man. Okay, no, it's right. Okay. But I think I didn't put it in the third match properly. Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to change what the third match was, but it basically ended with me winning. It ended with him going to Ardvarum after a weird play where he brought out Abyssrus when Ardvarum was on the field. And then I was just able to stop his Ardvarum from doing what it needed to, and then I boom batted. That was what happened with that one, so my apologies for getting that one wrong. Next is round 3 versus Cryofrost. I don't know what the proper term would this be. Would be like frozen ice or something? I don't know. I call it Cryofrost just because the cryo burns are in there. I know I spelled cryo wrong, but I kind of like how this version is. My opponent was Prime. I played Prime before. I don't remember if it was the last Premier Tournament or if it was one of the Invitationals or something that I've done. His deck is a pretty standard water frost package. You have your eddies, your galaxies to beat down. You have your Narpoons to search for your Cryolings or searching for your Morfrost to help pitch, which I don't necessarily agree. I can see why, because the Morfrost you expend a Frost to get in the Underworld faster, so you can turbo out Cryoling. So basically what happened in match 1, the key points was I forced an opponent to Gorgon Gaze a Boombat to stop something. It was because I was trying to get rid of his rabbit. He stopped it, and then I still chose to EQ the rabbit just to put that pressure on. You may think that wasn't a fair trade. That was 3 spirits versus a 1-cost rabbit, but I felt it was needed. That way he couldn't misenchant, cast out a Cryoling or Cryoburn. And then once I got a Spectrus on the board, he kind of needs to get rid of my Spectruses, otherwise I just walk over everything. Cryoling, if you cast before it gets its effect, it will lose it against a Spectrus. When you have a Galaxy, it loses to it. Eddie can kind of beat over it, but as long as Spectrus is on the field, my opponent can't do it much against this kind of deck. So he had I had to force shields and Gorgons on it. I think he bounced my Spectrus like twice, and then Gorgons did once, which to me is great value because it forces a lot of spirits out of my opponent just to handle a Spectrus. So in match 2, key move was my opponent PTA'd my Charlotte, so I couldn't get over his Narpoon. And then I decided to play a Zeus to kind of show it off to make sure he didn't get a body to stick. And then I was able to put pressure on my opponent. Excuse me. But even though I was able to put on pressure, by doing that early, he was just able to handle everything. He got the perfect setup needed where I couldn't get my tempo, and he overran me. So match 3, after my opponent used pretty much all but 2 of their removals, I got my 2 specs out. He was able to eventually deal with my specs with the final 2 removal cards, but having 2 Spectruses on the board is so hard for my opponent to navigate against a water deck that's reliant on Galaxy as your beater. So what generally would happen is he would revive or bring back the Morfrost, and they would be water enchanted. And at that point, they can't really do much against my guys. Nothing too special about his side deck. I'm sorry, I forgot to go over his deck before we delved into the notes. You have your fire just for a Lavalith. And a Cryo Scorch, I guess. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. If you're going to run Cryo, you might as well run an extra one just in case for a Lavalith. He has a second or a third Galaxy, I should say. 2 Sluggers for healing. His deck kind of needs the healing. He sided in his third Tsunami. He has 2 Hurricanes, which I feel 1 Hurricane should be in the main deck, but that's just my thoughts. 2 Spoiled Fruits. Pretty standard spirit package. 1 Thunder for each rabbit, I kind of feel like you don't need, but that's just me. But anyway, let's go to the next round. Being Soldier. Quite the match. It was terrifying. I hate going up against Blistrix. Being Soldier is on the More Frost package to help expedite the package of getting Morlith online. Alright, so you have your 3 Cedasaurs, you have your 3 Narpoons, you have your 3 Rabbits, you have your Catarant for healing to bring back, you have your Infrostix to bring back a body, you have your 3 Light Void and 1 Bat, you have your Scorpio to help pitch and reduce, you have 3 Sorlights, 3 Aspral, 3 Marlets, 3 Blizz, 3 Tsunamis, 3 Rise, 3 Shields, 3 Gorgons. Pretty stupid package. There will be another video, another instance later where it's not like this at all. I will say I am kind of excited about the side deck. You have your 2 more Catarants in case they need extra healing. You have Polaracne. I used to run the Polaracne in one of my early Frost decks, and it puts in a lot of work. Gives Elestrals -2 attack. It's really great. You have your 3 Hurricanes in the side deck, which is an interesting choice. I feel you could probably sneak one into the main deck, but based off of that list, I can see where it's kind of tight to do that. You have your 3 Cryoblast, 2 Mountains, and 3 Divine Blessings. Excuse me. Divine Blessings is a great call, because the main goal of us as the opponent is try to get rid of as many Elestrals as you can with card effects to make sure that nothing sticks. So it's great to see that. Nothing wrong with their Spirit deck. They have the 4 water, mainly for the Narpoons and the Tsunamis. Good on them. 2 Thunder for 3 Rabbits, I think is a good ratio. Like the last person had 3 Rabbits with 3 Thunder. You didn't really need to do that. You have 2 Wind. I think it's for the Blizzes in case you can get multiple Blistrixes out. Excuse me. And then the rest are Frost. Sorry about that. My Discord started popping off for whatever reason. Let me mute the phone. Okay, cool. So that's muted now. Alright. So let's get into the matchups. Match 1, not much to say. My opponent high rolled like crazy, and I just... So, I will say, my starting hand was okay, but I couldn't play an Elestral, or I could, but it wasn't one that I wanted to play starting off. I think there was an Eddie. So I expended to Drew, and I had no back row. And then on my opponent's turn, he just high rolled and was able to storm the field. And then just attacked me for like 6 damage in 1 turn. And at that point, there was no coming back. So it's my fault for keeping a hand. I thought it was a decent hand, even though I had no back row. Because my deck doesn't really worry too much about back row issues, because I can handle a lot of things. But him being able to turbo out like Aspirals and multiple Cedasaurs in 1 turn just... killed me. Not much to say about that. It is funny, we noted that he spent all of his luck on that first match, where the next 2 matches he kind of whiffed a lot. Even though we say he whiffed a lot, in second match, he was able to get out Aspral Cedasaur turn 1. However, on my turn, I was able to EQ and Hurricane the field so my Sorlight could clear the Aspral and the Cedasaur. So that was really great on my end that I had those kind of removals to take care of those. I felt that was a really great trade. I got rid of a Cedasaur just by taking over it, and then an Aspral to prevent a Blistrix. That's what, a 5, technically 6 for a 4. So it's not too bad of a trade-off. He then rose from the ashes at Aspral back and then hard ascended into a Blizz, which was fine because, you know, it cost him another 3 to do that, and then another 2 for Aspral, and then 1 for Blizz. I think at that point I Gorgon gazed it to stop, and then on my turn I just boomed. I went Boombat and just popped his Blizz, which was another victim that my Boombat has gotten besides other Elestrals, as I was saying. He did a decent amount of work today. And then at that point, my opponent just ran out of juice. Being able to do that, like his whiffs were pretty bad. He milled a lot of his cards that he needed to be able to make a comeback. All right, match 3. he once again was able to get out a first turn Venusaur. I EQ'd it. After that, there was no real traction after that for my opponent. He kept whiffing mills. I think he probably got rid of all of his Rise from the Ashes and whatnot, so it was really bad for him. I got to bring out a Mission Chin to Draco Doodle, and that kind of just won me the game. Because every time he would try to attack and crash into the Draco Doodle or attack over Draco Doodle, I would just Tsunami or stop the attack and put him in defense, and then I would just attack over him on my turn. I didn't get to use Draco Doodle's burn effect, because by the time I brought it out, it was too late in the game. He was very low on spirits. So it allowed me to pick up a win against the Blitzstrings. Consider this my revenge for the last Premier Tournament where I got top 8 with Water Animator and Bean Soldier was the person who knocked me out. I consider that revenge. Next is Lunar Nexus. I think this, I don't even know if I can probably call this Lunar Nexus. I think this is just like Lunar Ascension with some Nexus involved, just because of Comalis. It's a pretty standard. The only thing I don't like about it is a 1 Calf Mal. I get it's technically your healer, but you're taking in 1 Solar Spirit for it, and I feel you could have probably done something else. But I guess if you need a healer, Calf Mal is the one who does it because they can heal it back to Lunar Spirits. Pretty standard. You have your 3 Eddies, 3 Rabbits, your Elechick. You have your 3 Doppel, 3 Dobby and your Doppel. You have your 3 Spec. You have 3 Comalises as your searchers and a Farrageist. I think this deck is called TurboTax is the name that they're going with this deck. Not official name, by the way. Just deck name going around. You have your EQ. You have your 2 Tsunamis. You have your 2 Zeus. 2 Cryo. You have your 3 Ambrosias. You have your Restings. 2 Shield and PTAs, which is interesting because normally people run like 3 each. You have Argos. And a Necklace. Those really messed me up, I will say, in the matches. I was not expecting an Argo package for this kind of deck, but it works really well. And then you have your 3 Shields. So side deck, you have 3 Joltins in your side. I don't really think you need Joltins, but I guess if you're going to win the 1 Stadium in the side deck, you can. You have your 2 Boombats, which, as I said, I prefer Boombats in the main deck now, but I can see why you would put it in the side. You have your 3rd Cryoblast. You have Dense Fogs. You have Waxing Crescent, or I think that is. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. I think that's Waxing. You have Temple to boost your Lunar Elestrals, and then 3 Divine Blessings. Spirit Math, you have your 1 Frost for the Cryo, you have your 1 Solar for your Calf Mal, which, I don't know, I just feel like if you get Gorgons for your Calf Mal, you just waste that Spirit, but that's just neither here nor there. 2 for Earth, 3 for Water, which is just for the Eddies and Tsunamis, and 8 altogether for your Lunar package. Very cost heavy, but it was very effective. Every time I would try to attack over an Celestial, he would go Argo package, which is fine by me because it's very cost heavy for him to do that. I was able to pull it out in the end, barely, but I was able to do it. I was able to basically get rid of his Comalises, which put a lot of pressure on. Match 2, my opponent kept pulling another Comalis off of his Comalis searching, so he always had to wait a Nexus, and with Argo, he was always able to Nexus at least 1 or 2 spirits to keep bringing guys back to make sure I couldn't out-tempo him. Small move on my opponent's part. Alright, Match 3 was really fun, because Match 3 is where Dracodoodle actually got to use its effect. So we're in basically the end game. My opponent has a Spectress in an attack position. I bring out Dracodoodle. I choose to suppress. So at this point, I'm going to attack his Spectress. And if I do that, he's going to take, I think it was 1 or 2 spirit difference. No, he's going to take 1 spirit difference from the spirit difference. And then he was going to take 3 from the burn, which was 4 spirits. And he had exactly 5 spirits left. So to do that, he played Waxing Gibbous, which swapped him to defense, but he paid off of it by the Spectress. So Spectress was gone, making it a direct attack, so he only had to take 2 that turn instead of the 5 or 4 that he was going to take. Really smart play by my opponent. I don't know if a lot of other people would have bothered to do that. It worked, but he then wasn't able to draw anything with a rabbit on in defense, he wasn't able to beat over the Dracodoodle. So Dracodoodle won me the game. So I've won with Fowlicanes and I've won with Dracodoodles. Alright, Blistrix, the Revenge Arc. This was Disencoder. Now, Disencoder's deck is pretty similar to Being Soldiers. However, there's less rises, and the rabbits are your searchers to make it more consistent. And let me tell you, somehow his deck was so consistent, he always hit, that he always swarmed the field, and I just could not keep up, no matter what. I don't know what it was. He was just able to high roll like crazy. I just could not keep up. It was an easy 2-0 in his favor. I think he got like 2 or 3 blizzards out at once. It was over. It was devastating. His side deck is pretty similar. You have your 3rd Rise in there. You have Polar Agnes once again, which I think is really cool. Except for, I will say the one thing that kind of confused me was having the Ambrosias in the side deck and not the main deck. But I guess in that kind of deck, you're going to probably mill them anyway. So I'd rather have them in the side deck. Alright, Water Reanimator. My second soul-crushing game. And the only other game that I lost in this tournament. He was on Water Reanimator. And let me tell you, his Water Reanimator, he just needed a Galaxy and a Moss Station, and he just ran the board with me. There were a few times where I could potentially get over it, but because of Moose Station's effect of swapping and trying to get over a Galaxy, with a Water Stadium, if it wasn't for a Water Stadium, I actually could have done something. I kind of misplayed, but in hindsight, it wasn't really too much of a misplay. I cast a rabbit, and one of the cards in the hand that I would have got off of the rabbit was a P-Gust, or I think I did set in an Island, and I could have picked Island to get rid of his Atlantis, and I didn't, thinking it wasn't going to be a problem, but it ended up being a problem, and he just beat over me. So that was my hindsight, that I couldn't get over it because of a stadium. So I lost just because of those 2 cards. Alright. Now we're entering Top Cut, ladies and gentlemen. Top Cut. Against an opponent you've seen me compete against in multiple tournaments over the last 2 months. Adam. He is rocking his Tourney deck, which I have faced before. So before we get into that, so as I was watching one of the matches on live stream, one of our competitors mentioned that his deck was very hot today. So under that assumption, I thought he was on like Fire Nexus. So we get started, and then I realized, oh, you meant heat as in the desert heat, which means solar. So it was really fun. His side deck his main deck is really cool. It's 3 Eddies, 3 Bunnies, Elecheck. Pretty standard package in a lot of decks. You have your 3 Windjins, 2 Tornadjins, 3 Calfmels, 3 Lumarus. Those are your guys. You have tons of beaters. Those Lumarus can put in so much work, and they did put in. One of them did put in work against me, which I regret allowing. You have your 1 EQ. You have your 3 Tsunamis. You have your 2 Zeuses to extra beat down. You have your Hurricane. You have your 2 Cryoblast. You have your standard package from the rest out. 3 Shield, 3 Gorgons, 3 Ambrosia, 1 PTA. I kind of feel like instead of a PTA, you should probably just do another Altar, and then your Rustings. And that's just my thought. Pretty awesome deck. Great way to foretell and stuff. I really feel you probably should have. You have to do a lot of blind foretelling with this deck, so it's kind of interesting. So side deck, you have your you have 2 Spectruses and your 1 Allen for them. You have 2 Galaxies. You have 2 other Hurricanes. You have your Temples, 2 Divines. You have your other 2 PTAs and Spoiled Fruits. Spirit deck, not much to say about it. Alright, so key highlights. Match 1. He was able to get out Tourney in turn 2. Just got super lucky on his call. Unfortunately for him, he walked right into a shield. Downhill on my opponent's luck to draw into anything after that. Once again, I had to force opponent to GG a Boombat to protect Rabbit when he was super low on spirits. Forcing opponent to GG a Boombat is great, because then I'll just re-enchant. If I forget how I did it, but I think it was gone at that point, but I could get over Rabbit with any other cards, or my Boombat had 2 spirits on it. I don't know off the top of my head. Match 2. He was able to get Tourney out round 4. or his turn 2, but altogether round 4. Well, yes. Opponent just swarmed the field afterwards and kept tempo. I unfortunately had a way to stop his Lumaru from milling me, and I was keeping my... I unfortunately allowed that attack to go through because I felt later on this face-down card that I had would have been more useful to me. And then as I did that, and then I milled 3 cards, my outs were in there, and because the outs were milled from that Lumaru, I could not get back in the game. Super unfortunate. Game 3. Alright, I got Dracodoodle out again. He was able to stop Dracodoodle from doing anything, or I think I destroyed an Elestral. He was starting to get super low on spirits. He was able to ascend into Tourney, which unfortunately allowed him to walk over my Dracodoodle. But thankfully I had a rabbit in defense position, and then I just hard ascended over my rabbit into a Boombat. I used Boombat's effect to pop the Tourney, and then I attacked with Boombat for game. So Boombat won me the game after getting rid of a Tourney, after I've gotten rid of a Farragut. Boombat's great. Boombat should be main in every deck. That's just my thought. But shout out to my opponent. We've faced each other multiple times. I consider him one of my rivals. He hates going against my deck just because of how annoying it can be. But anyway, semifinals, Wet 5s, JJPM. Pretty standard package, except for he's running Nobbies and Doppelgators. I feel this is a way Wet 5s has gone with the Nobby line just because of the reduction, just speed over guys. Side deck, pretty standard with the Cockatoodles, once again for the Lunar aggro matchups. But I feel their deck is pretty good enough to where against the Lunar aggro deck they're fine. Not much to say, so we're just going to get into it. So notes. Match 1, I EQ'd a Foamy, and then I brought out a Spectress. I don't like Foamies. Main goal is always to get rid of the Foamies as much as possible so they can't try to do the Moon Station Galaxy combo. And so I EQ'd a Foamy and then tried a Spectress to stop both Foamies from sticking. He was able to stop the Spectress by Tsunami, I'm pretty sure. And then after that, he brought out a Galaxy. And now, Galaxy can't get over Spectress even though I'm in defense because I would just suppress. So then he tries attacking over it with a Foamy, who is now a 3 attack because of Galaxy. I made the call to shield the Foamy. So if you were watching the live stream, they questioned why I would shield a Foamy. Well, obviously the Foamy to prevent getting over the Spectress that turn, and then because they would have to recast Foamy later on. So then I was able to keep my Spectress alive, which then was able to deal with the Galaxy, and then it made my opponent not want to play another Foamy because I would just be able to get over it. So that allowed me to get the game. By having the Spectress alive, it would prevent Nobbies from being played because they wouldn't be able to beat down on my Nobby unless they went for their own Zeuses or they went for EQ and stuff like that, or a Moon Station expend effect. So match 2, opponent started down 2 because they had a mulligan. It feels bad to mulligan in like the top cut because being 2 spirits down, especially against my deck, can be kind of devastating. But just in general, mulliganing against your opponent and being down so many spirits puts you at such a disadvantage, it's not even funny. There was a lot of back and forth in the game. I'm really happy to see a lot of back and forth. Not much to say. I was just able to keep a lot of pressure on my opponent. I guess the key point of the match was opponent casted a Misenchanted Spec when I had a Galaxy out, and I wanted to protect him at that point, so I PTA'd, which allowed him not being able to beat over it because he was Misenchanted purpley. So it allowed me to get over a 3 Spirit Rabbit the next turn, which at that point, super value PTing a Galaxy, a Misenchanted Spectress. It only cost me 2, but it technically cost my opponent like 4 spirits in the long run. Not much to say. Really fun matches. I felt bad that my opponent had a mulligan, but I really enjoyed the game just because there was a lot of back and forth. Alright, final match. Blistrix. Round 3. I've won, I've lost. And technically, if I followed the pattern, which I did, I won. But it's still terrifying going in against Blizz because anything is possible. Like, there's a lot of notes on this just because I felt this is the one I wanted to talk about the most. Some of the others were short and simple. Alright, so once again, pretty standard Blizz deck. However, what separates this Blizz deck from the others is the Avalanche, which increases the mill and high roll odds of this deck. The other ones don't, because they focus more on like rabbits or whatever, and you don't want to roll or high roll too much. Alright, so opponent milled 2 rises off of the first turn, which significantly slowed down his deck from getting Blizz on the field. If you get rid of 2 out of his 3 rises, and he mills his Blizzes ahead of time, there's no way you're getting those Blizztrixes back. And at that point, it's kind of game over, because then you're just dealing with a 7-beater in Astral. So my opponent was forced to hard ascend into Blizz, but I stopped him with the Gorgons. I felt that was value, because I had removal on my hand. So I forget what removal it was. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was a Boombat, because Boombat put in so much work. I just casted Boombat, I used Boombat and popped his Blizz. At that point, the opponent was down 6 spirits at that point. Sometimes when you're down so many spirits like that and you don't have a board state to use against me, being down so many spirits just basically means you lose. Yeah, opponent conceded to that because they couldn't draw into anything, and being down so many spirits when I started to develop a board state is just really bad. I think I had 3 Elestrals on the field at that point, and he had none. So at that point, it was kind of game over. Match 2. He was able to see the sword turn 1, and then I had to resting on your laurels. When you see a Cedar on the field, you basically always have to have removal and be able to beat over it. Although otherwise, they can just freely ascend into Blizztrix. So I did that, and then sadly he hit Astral and Cedar again. And at that point, there was too much pressure because I already used 1 removal. The likelihood of me drawing my other removal together was just impossible, and then he just roamed the field afterwards. Alright, match 3. He went Tap Flow. He was able to Tap Flow special in Astral, trying to get Blizz early for pressure. He missed. He walked into a shield. A lot of people said I shouldn't have shielded the Astral, but I didn't want him to hard ascend into Blizz that way, and I'd rather him get possibly stuck with Astral in his hand again. That's kind of my goal. If I can shield a 2 or 3 cost back to our hand that's hard to bring out, I will do it. So at that point, I was slowly building pressure to put on opponent, making him have to think carefully about plays. Because the more spirits he was down, the harder it was for him to achieve his combo. So because he was getting so low, and I bounced the Astral to the hand, he had to rise from the Ash, one of his Snowlits, to see if he could possibly hit something. Generally, when you rise, you want to bring back Blizztrix right away or an Astral to hopefully get into Blizz. But because he didn't have that option, you're paying 4 just for an Astral and hoping to draw or expend a Astral to go into 5 spirits. That's super bad. But he hit a Cedar off of that, so he got rewarded for it because then he hard ascended his Cedar into Blizz anyway. I once again Gorgon gazed at Blizz, so he didn't get its effect to return anything on my field. And then this is where the moment happened, right? So I have 3 Elestrals on the field. I have a Rabbit, I have a Sorlet, I have a Galaxy up against his Cedar and his Blizz. The only way out for me is a Boombat. Well, one of the only outs for me is a Boombat. But I forgot my other out, my main guy, Fowlicane. So I draw. My top deck, it's Fowlicane. Now, he has 1 back row. I'm curious if it's a Gorgon's Gaze. So what I do is I use Galaxy's effect to swap Blizz's attack and defense, making him a 6 attack. No response. Okay, I hard ascend over my Sorlet that's on the field into Fowlicane. See if there's a response. No response. I use Fowlicane's effect. I expend 1 to pop his back row. It was a shield, I'm pretty sure it was. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was something like that. And there was just nothing. And then I attacked over his Blizztrix with Fowlicane. And at that point, he was down to like 1 or 2 more spirits, and then at that point, he just had to go. So that's how I won the game. I top decked my boss monster, Fowlicane. And that is how I won the tournament. Keynotes. even though I've used this deck for 2 months, there are still things I need to learn about this deck, and knowing when and proper times to use effects. Super fun deck. I really enjoy this. I'm glad to bring Fowlicane to the spotlight, because I think Fowlicane last won in like before pre-release during one of those kind of tournaments. So bringing a card like this back into the limelight, I'm very happy. I'm excited to see what else this deck can do, if this deck can ever go again and get a second championship. And I'm also ready to try other decks, so we will see. If you like this kind of content where I go over the premier tournaments that I participate in and do a review over my decks and my opponent's decks and some notes from the match, as I said before, please leave a comment down below letting me know and what stuff you would like to see when I do stuff like this. And make sure you leave a like. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps push the channel. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers. That way I can reach the first step of monetization. That way any money I get from the channel goes right back into the channel and I can do more fun videos. Alright, well, this is SorenPlays. Thank you all. Good evening.